Namaste, everyone. Like all good things, we are back with season two of Tester Speak on the Test Chat YouTube channel. And I'm your host, Brajesh Deb. And with me today is one of my heroes. He's already there on the screen. His name is Prashant Hegde. Welcome, Prashant. A little bit about Prashant. Prashant is a speaker, he's a blogger, he's obviously an awesome tester. He has been, instrumental in building high performance testing teams. He is, you know, almost everywhere when it comes to, blogs and posts and conference talks and he has got a bundle of advice for all of us testers. So it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming Prashant to the very first episode of season two of Tester Speak. Welcome, Prashant.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Brijesh. I'm very excited and happy to be on your show. And you are one of those very few testers who I look up to. And I'm especially a fan of your nothing called manual testing thought. And I can't thank you enough for spreading that awareness. And you have been super active on LinkedIn, and you are one of the most proactive testers in our community. So thank you so much for all your contributions. I think you are inspiring a lot of testers. Keep up the great job that you are doing.
Well, thank you, Prashant. You are extremely kind. I know I have been following your journey for quite some time, and the viewers won't believe that this is our very first formal introduction, but it never seems like one because you know Prashant and I have been talking on and off, commenting on each other's work. I have attended Prashant's, conference talks so many times and read his posts online so many times. It doesn't feel that I am talking to him for the very first time formally. It feels that I have known him for quite some time, and our interaction, whatever we had while we were setting up this particular session, was as if that we've known each other for a long time, and we are like, okay, chalo, friends will meet and we'll start talking, and that's that's exactly how it looks like. So, Prashant, how are things going with you during this pandemic?
I think things are going well for me. So to look at the positive side of things, I think I'm able to spend a lot of time on writing more blogs, articles, able to speak at more conferences since things are remote. And one more added advantage is that I can spend a lot of time with my family and with my daughter. So, so those are some of the positive things that I feel have happened because of the pandemic.
Well, awesome, awesome, awesome. I especially like the fact that you're able to spend more time with your family, so much so that you are sitting in your daughter's room right now, which is amazing. That's a beautiful background you have, and
Thank
and
you.
I quite like the new hairstyle that that you have. We must. So and you were telling me that you did it by yourself. That is.
So I mean, long hairs are too much to maintain during summer. So I got a haircut.
Well,
You
I like that. I like that long hair on you, and I was trying to instigate my family to allow me to keep hair like that. But now they can obviously go back to you and say, "Look, Prashant got a haircut, so you to you 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 have to keep your hair short as well." Well, anyways, so Prashant, why testing?
So this is a long story, but I think it will be an interesting one.
Please.
So right from my childhood, I think I was very much into gaming. I used to play a lot of video games in my childhood. During my pre-university or my 12th, I used to skip classes I and my friends used to go to a gaming center and we used to play Counter Strike whole day. That
Oh,
that was my routine. I completely ignored my studies. Uh, we used to participate in all these gaming competitions locally. We used to have this betting for gaming. I completely ignored my studies, for which I got a huge blow during my engineering days. I was not eligible for any of the campus interviews because I did not have a academic record of 60% or whatever throughout my career. And after graduation, all my friends, all my classmates, most of them had jobs either in MNCs like TCS or Accenture, but I was one of the very few people who was left without a job. During that time, I was okay about it. I was not very serious about anything. But things started to change, right? Once you finish graduation and you don't have a job, people start giving you a lot of free advices.
mm,
And my parents started to pressurize me because they were pressurized by relatives, friends or whomever. And 10 people used to tell me 10 different things of what I should be doing. I was totally confused of what I should do next. And to add to this pressure, uh, during my engineering days, I was in a relationship with a girl. Okay? And after graduation, her parents started looking for a boy to get her married to. So I had to find a job quickly so that I can, bring back both my personal and my career, both personal life and my career back to track. That was the kind of situation I was in. And I heard from one of my friends that, if I go to Bangalore, I come from a city called Hubli. So if I go to Bangalore and enroll myself in a software testing course from a popular trainer, I might find a job, and something might happen with my career. So I did not know what software testing was, or what software development was. I needed a job. I came and enrolled in this course. But when I did that, once again there were lot of advice about why I should not pursue software testing. There were a lot of negativities around software testing. People told me
yeah.
that software testing has no career growth. People who fail as developers, they are the ones who pursue software testing. And the classic one is software test automation will take away all software testing jobs.
Oh my
I will,
God.
I will, I will not get any, I will not get a good paycheck because, software testers are not having any respect or not treated with respect. So I heard so many negativities around testing. So I had to rethink if I was doing the, right thing by pursuing software testing. But somewhere I believed that as long as you follow your, as long as you, give your 100%, as long as you put your heart out, if you are passionate about what you do, no matter what career path you choose or no matter what profession you choose, you will find success. So I strongly believed in that and I continued to pursue software testing.
Awesome.
Uh, and within 2 months of pursuing software testing, I started liking software testing. I started to read more books about testing. So I found my first job. So can you guess what my first job was? It was that of a game tester. The very same thing that I thought ruined my career helped me find my first job. So this job wanted somebody who was an expert in gaming and has good knowledge of software testing. And I fit this really well. And it was like a dream job for me. Right? I play games for a living. So I was on cloud nine and I thought, my life will be set with this kind of, profile. But I very soon realized that, there is very little progression that I can do with that job because it was a contract job and it was a very low paying job. Uh, and I could learn very little, right? And it was like for 3 to 6 months post that, you would be asked to leave once the project is done. So I quickly started upgrading myself with test automation, mobile app testing. Uh, I learned different things so that I can upgrade and I can do a switch. Parallelly, my girlfriend, she came to Bangalore because she was pressurized in her home, uh, and she had to find a job herself. Otherwise, she can't handle the pressure. So I taught her testing, okay, and she also got into testing. Uh, then once I made a switch from game testing, I started testing mobile apps. I started testing web applications. From there, I think there was no looking back. I took complete ownership of all the projects that I worked on and delivered high quality products in tight schedules and deadlines. And fortunately, I was working closely with the clients and with my decision makers. So they were able to actually recognize my potential. They were able to uh, see the hard work I was putting in, and I could elevate very quickly to a leadership position uh, in the places that I worked. And parallelly, I started sharing my thoughts. I started blogging, speaking at conferences, and yeah, today we are here. That has been my journey.
So, if I may just ask you,
Yeah, yeah,
what happened to your girlfriend?
yeah. So we got married 4 years back. So I want to use this platform to tell all the aspiring software testers that do not underestimate software testing by listening to the negativity around it. It has given me everything that I ever wanted. Right, I could bring back both my career and my personal life both on track. Uh, so if you embrace software testing and if you give your 100%, I think this is a wonderful profession. So
What an amazing story, and what inspiration. I mean, for those people who are planning to get married, yeah, software testing. Software testing is a profession for you guys. If you are being pressurized by your families, join testing, get married, come on. We have a very good example here. Well, no, on a very serious note, I think this is an inspiring journey for me, because uh, for somebody who played game in college, to find a job as a game tester. So what you are doing right now, if you are in college, if you are watching this video and you're still in college in the final year, okay, don't give up on that, because you don't know what the future actually holds for you. Okay, and if you are good at something, then nurture that. That would be my sincere advice, because Prashant was good at gaming. He saw some light in joining the game testing thing. Of course, there were other reasons, like it was not highly paying or whatever. But that initial thrill,
yes,
when you see, okay, oh, I'm going to test a game, that is, I can relate to it, because you know uh, I've been playing with mobile phones and mobile devices and mobile apps for a long, long time. And to suddenly find myself in a spot where I'm testing those, I'm like, wasn't this something that I always wanted to do? Okay, so I have got that feeling. I still enjoy testing mobile app once in a while. When I literally nothing else to do, I'll just pick up the phone. There are so many apps available on your Apple Store or your Play Store. Just download, just start playing around, just start testing. If you observe anything, if if you think that's a bug, just go back to the developers, report it to them. It's fun, and the best part is sometimes you get paid as well. So so if you get lucky, well, they'll come back to you and say, hey, that's a good bug. We're going to pay you for that one.
small bounty.
Yeah, it's so this has happened to me a few times, and I quite like this. Well, so Prashant, you got into a leadership position in testing. Now, one of the things that we always talk about in testing is, okay, you have to test in a certain way, you have to follow process, you have to follow certain rules and things like that. But As a leader in the testing space, how do you see the importance of processes and uh, you know do you probably force your team to follow processes, if I may put it in a very blunt way?
Okay. So I think, see, as a leader, what one should be doing is, see, bringing processes, tools, or techniques to an organization is easier. But as a leader, what one should be doing is building a strong culture. That's what a leader should do. Uh, so yes, processes are required, because uh, whether you are in a startup or in a MNC, right? So you need processes so that uh, there is a proper flow. But again, becoming a slave of process is something that I'm against. But some processes are required. But building a culture is much more difficult and important for a leader than bringing in processes, tools, or techniques.
So the reason why I asked you this is, let's go to the Agile Manifesto. Okay, and the
Okay.
Agile Manifesto, the first thing it's or the first value it says is individuals and interactions over processes and
Okay.
tools. And when it comes to testing, it still holds good. And just like you said, that it's important as a leader to build culture, and which of course involves the people. It involves individuals and interactions. And in this case, I'm going to take a few names of a few testers. Let's see if you can recognize those testers, and then we will talk about it further.
Okay.
Okay. These are some of the testers who are very vocal in the testing industry. They write,
Mhm.
they speak in conferences, and they make a lot of noise. Okay.
Okay.
One, one of the testers that I'm going to name is Pooja Shah. I'm
Mhm.
sure you've heard of Pooja. Then another tester is Siri Murthy.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've heard of Siri. Another tester that I can think of is Gagana.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've heard of. So, do these names ring a bell for you?
I've heard them somewhere. I'm trying to recall. so, so these are the people who I work with. Uh, so all of us work in the same organization, Moengage.
Exactly. Exactly. And the reason why I took these names is because I see you as a leader building such high performance teams, influencing and encouraging and inspiring such awesome testers. Okay, if we look at the work that Pooja has been doing, I mean, I can go on talking about Pooja for probably an entire day, and still I would not get tired. She's done so much incredible job. I have seen a progression. Okay, from her early days, we've followed each other for quite some time, and done that. So she's fantastic. We've seen how good Siri is. She did a test flick stocks uh, in the winter, and I think that brought out a very bright side of her, and how good she is as a tester. Then we've seen Gagana write some wonderful pieces. She's brilliant with her blogging. So all of this culminates to me, and as a part of a culture that is being built of a high performance team. So as a leader, how do you do that?
Okay. So I think one of the most important traits of a leader is empathy. Okay. So empathetic leaders are the ones who bring, I feel, better results. Right. When you genuinely care about your team and their long-term success, that's when I think a leader will be successful. And I believe in a more consultative style of leadership, wherein rather than you directing your team to do something, right, you try to coach them, you try to listen to them, right? So these days, as leaders, we are doing a lot of talking, but we are not listening enough. So I believe in coaching my team and trying to bring out the best in them. So that's one way how we do it. And we talked about Siri and Gagana. So I will just tell you about initiative that we did, which helped so many testers. So we thought that we will have a monthly session wherein every tester from the team comes in and presents an idea. Okay, it can be anything about testing. So Siri was the first one who gave a talk in our brown bag session. The very same talk she talked in Testplex was her first session in our brown bag. So then we thought that this is a good topic. Why don't you apply? You know why don't you try speaking uh, in a conference?
Mm.
So she submitted that abstract, and she did a wonderful talk.
Oh yeah, she did.
Same thing with Gagana. So she talked about accessibility testing. So
Yeah.
she had not written uh, any blog. She was hesitant and she was skeptical if she would be able to write a good blog. So she actually was so smart that I was telling in one of our regular meetings that uh, the only way that a tester can upskill is not by automation. I was telling this. That somehow recorded in her mind, and she started with the same thing that there is also something like accessibility which we are not talking enough about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she started, she blogged about the same thing, and surprisingly, with her first blog, she won a competition, right? So that one initiative brought out so much from all of our testers. So I think that is something that we as testers are not doing. We are not, trying to be empathetic with our team. We are not trying to, genuinely care for them and their long-term success. If we do that, I think you will be able to build high performance teams.
Was that the Synapse QA
Synapse QA Super Reads. Yes.
Super Reads? Yes, that was the one she won, and I think
Yes.
she did a fantastic job with the other bloggers there. I think Vijeta was one of the bloggers, Vijeta Tiwari.
Mhm.
She's a phenomenal writer, and reading Gagana's work. I mean, you know that also brings up another thought, and just like you said a few minutes ago, that it's not automation the only route to upskill. You've got things like accessibility testing, and you've got very few experts in that area.
Mm.
So it's kind of a niche skill that can be acquired. Okay, not a lot of people talk about accessibility testing. You know, yes, it is required, but when you look at somebody's test strategy, you will find accessibility mentioned only one word in some corner,
Somewhere in the corner.
some corner, and then nobody, anyways, the strategy documents, nobody looks at them. And even in the mad rush of your sprints and your deliveries and things like that, okay, it's okay if we can skip that part, it's fine, it's a low priority item. So how would you advise testers uh, to look at different avenues of upskilling if it is just not test automation?
Mm. So as we all know, I think we are having this bandwagon effect of going beyond behind test automation because everybody else is doing that, and probably people think that there are only two aspects of testing. One is manual testing, so-called manual testing. I'm talking about manual testing in front of Brijesh. So so-called manual testing and automation, right? Uh, and usually these are the only two things or two activities which we feel are relevant at our work. We do not think about non-functional aspects. We do not talk about functional. We do not talk about security testing, or
Right.
we do not talk about performance testing. It is not that your project does not need it. I think we are not, grown, or we have not tried to test those aspects of our software, right? No company or no organization says or prevents testers or says that you are prohibited from doing security testing, or you are prohibited from doing performance testing. Somewhere I think we ourselves are not consciously trying to learn that. Mm. So in Moving Age, what we do is we actually encourage testers to learn new skills and try to apply that in your day-to-day work. Right? it might be initially it might be something that you might feel is not important or essential, or you might even feel this is not a job of a tester. But once I think the organization start seeing value, when you are being, when you are having this multiple skill set, that's when I think people will start respecting you as a tester. You will build more credibility as a tester when you are capable of doing much more things than just clicking few buttons on the UI. Uh, so I think whatever we learn, if we implement it in our day-to-day work, I think that's when organizations will notice testers. They will start respecting them. You will get more respect from your developers, right? So I think it's all about learning and trying to utilize the skill that you learned in your day-to-day work. That's the approach that we usually try.
I completely agree with that. But having said that, let me ask you this. You mentioned about the bandwagon effect and everybody trying to join, do test automation. And I've spoken about the bandwagon bias in conferences, and especially related to the exact same topic. Do you think, as an industry, or as a community, we have very unrealistic expectations from test automation?
Definitely, I think the majority of the test automation initiatives fail because of the unrealistic expectations around them.
Like
It's
what? 100% coverage?
Yeah, there are a lot. I will tell you. One is unrealistic expectations. One from the decision makers or the influential people in your organization, and second is from we testers ourselves. I think somewhere we. I am not talking about everybody, but majority of the testers that I have seen do not understand the objective of testing, nor do they understand the objective of automation. So the stakeholders or the influential people are in the mindset that we need to quickly accelerate to the market and be first in the industry so that we have a competitive edge. That's a fair enough expectation. But what they feel is automation will magically, get that for them.
Yeah.
And we as testers, firstly, we fail to understand it. But secondly, when we understand it, we fail to educate our stakeholders. We do not set the right expectations. Rather, we try to impress them by showing them something that they want. These days automation equals to UI automation, that equals to Selenium. That's how it has become. So we just show them some demo of a login page where the computer presses few buttons for you, and you are happy. You will get a promotion. Your stakeholders are happy because they feel that now we can accelerate faster. uh, But somewhere what we fail to realize is there are two phases of testing. Testing equals to checking plus exploring. Testing is never complete without exploring, right? Repeatability cannot find you surprises. You will find surprises only when you vary. Because of the variations is what when you find surprise. Uh,
Exactly.
that aspect is completely forgotten, and we completely do not plan for automation, right? When we just choose an open source tool because everybody else is doing it, we do not think if it will solve our problem. We don't ask the question, what am I trying to accomplish with test automation, right? We are not thinking, do I have the required skills, do I have the required resources, budget. We do not do a pilot project or a feasibility study. And forget about measuring automation. Nobody talks about it. How do you measure the ROI of test automation? So usually when people talk about automation, I ask them, okay, how much time are you saving from test automation? How much efforts are you saving? How effective are your test cases? Is your test automation able to mitigate some risks? So I always have a doubt about the defect detection percentage of automation. This might look controversial, but finding new bugs with automation sometimes does not happen because once again it's scripted testing, and it often falls to this pesticide paradox is something that happens often with test automation.
Correct.
Plus we never think about maintenance of testing. We always feel that It's just launch and forget mission. Once you launch it, you'll start seeing benefits. We fail to understand that it's a long term investment. So there is a lot of misconception about automation and unrealistic expectations. That's why we are seeing so many failures around automation.
And my question, is always one more step just after what you said. How much time are we saving? That is one aspect. And what are you doing with that time that you have saved with automation?
Exactly.
What exactly are you doing with that time? Why is it that despite all the automation you have, there is a mad rush just before the release date? And that there is always this dilemma whether am I going to make that release on that date or not. And then there is this last minute scampering. Okay, we might not execute all the scenarios. Let's do a prioritization. Okay, then we talk to business and then we say, okay, according to you, which are the high priority cases? And the PO gives a list, and then you jump onto those. There is no risk analysis. um, I have been in situations where, you know, I don't know if the customer is listening. Probably they will, but I will still mention it. They do a risk analysis just before release. I mean, I find that absurd because if you do a risk analysis just before release, when do you have the time to mitigate those risks?
Exactly.
Or are you doing it just because you want to do it? You want to, check a box saying, okay, risk analysis done.
Done.
Okay, so and then and then and then you come back and say, oh, you know what? I could have bought a Bentley with the money that I could have saved on fixing that bug if I had caught it in time. So it is that expensive.
Yes. Yes.
They get bugs in production, and to fix it, it's a nightmare. So, and then, once you get a bug in production, oh, the testing team missed it.
Yes.
They didn't
And
test it properly.
yeah.
So you,
So you brought a good point, Brijesh. See, the time saved with automation, right? So one of the objectives of automation should be it should free up your testers to do more creative testing. It should give
exactly.
you time to do uh, deep testing. If you without automation, you might end up doing the same repetitive, high level tests again and again. So if your automation covers your critical business cases, your team would be freed up to do more deeper and more creative testing, which probably you won't be able to do in a time box. So that should be one of the objectives of automation.
Absolutely. And guys, if you're watching this, no way, nowhere are we saying that automation should not be done, or we are anti-automation or anything like that. The point that, and Prashant, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The point that Prashant is trying to make here is that if you want to do automation, do it the right way. Okay, understand your objectives, understand what you're trying to achieve with that automation. Do not restrict it just to some repeatability. Okay, you can do things like, right from the requirement stage with automation. You could use it for analytics. You could use it for test data generation. You could use it for reporting. Okay, explore the scope of automation. Explore what automation can do to you, and don't be limited to the commercial tools or whatever you hear. Obviously, people are talking about Selenium day in day out. They are building frameworks on top of Selenium and using Selenium, whatever. And then, of course, now there is a rise of tools which is probably giving you more access to API level tests and helping you do that, which is a good sign. Okay, but then understand that writing a simple shell script is also automation. If
Exactly.
that makes your life easy, then do that.
Mm.
If it is something that can help you in your testing, then do that. I mean, that's also automation. And our friend Soumya Mukherjee, in one of the conference talks, he mentioned something really nice. He said, if you do, if you use a formula in an Excel sheet,
Mm.
that's also automation. right? That's also automation. So you just put in the input values and you get the sum or the average or whatever you want to do. That is automation, right? So if you understand that power, because in complex Excel sheets, which has got a lot of data, if you need to do a lot of processing, you just write a few formulas or build a macro that will do the math for you, build nice charts and stuff like that. All you've got to care about is to bring the data to the Excel sheet. Rest of it is done by the stuff that you've built. That is automation. That is the power. It frees your time to do some cool stuff, like Prashant said. So that is a very good point made, Prashant. I want to move on to the next question for you. So now, when we look at test automation, one of the things that comes to our mind is or not just test automation, but about testing is test data. But I've got another aspect of it. We talk about data being an important part of the testing life cycle and things like that. But how about testers themselves being data driven? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important for us testers to be data driven because uh, though all of us think that we are logical, right? We all think emotionally and then try to justify it logically. Uh, and we often talk about biases in testing, and there are like 180 plus biases which actually hamper our decision making, right? So we cannot avoid them to a large extent, but at least when we are making critical decisions, you need to make those decisions which are backed by data. I'll give you some examples probably. Brijesh talked about, uh, bug found in production. I will take that. Okay. So we were also in every company we have this discussion when there is a bug in production. Okay, why did not testers catch that? There is always a discussion around it. And usually what happens is uh, testers are the first ones who get bad mouthed or who get blamed for the bug, regardless of what who made the mistake or whatever that is. Uh, though we try to develop a blameless culture, people say that we are trying to build a blameless culture, but we have to admit there is at least some blame, or at least a little bit of blame that happens everywhere. So what we do is we started analyzing production issues. Okay, it's very simple thing. You just analyze your production issues. For example, if you analyze who are the most who are the customers who are most impacted by the production issues. So when we analyzed this, we saw that in the last 1 year and in the last 3 months, it were the same customers who were affected by bugs. Some customers are frequently affected than others. So this analysis helped us to closely investigate these customers, because at the end, as testers, what we do is we need to mimic the way our customers test, right?
Exactly.
Somewhere we forget that when we become too much used to the application that we are testing, right? We talked about test data. We do not enter Unicode, or we do not enter emojis. Rather, we just enter something like test. Okay, submit, works fine. That's how we get used to testing the product. But when you look at production data, the way your customer is using it, they are using it in the ways that you cannot even imagine. So you will be effective as a tester when you start replicating the way your customer tests, both in terms of behavior as well as test data. So we were able to analyze our customer bugs. We analyzed who were the top 5 customers who were most affected. And then what we did was, in our test, we tried to mimic their test data. We tried to mimic the way they made the actions, which made our testing more effective. This was one benefit of we analyzing and becoming data driven. Another example is, similarly, we started looking at root causes of issues.
Yeah.
So when we started looking at root causes of issues, we found out that most of the issues that customers report were already reported, but we somewhere, were not prioritizing bugs. Our bugs were mostly in the backlog. We never prioritized them, though they were trivial. When a customer reports it, it becomes, super important,
Yeah.
right? So we also learned that we need to be more proactive in picking bugs from the backlog, right? So when you start analyzing, when you start having some metrics, when you start analyzing your data, I think you will do a much better job as a tester than, driven by your intuition. That's my take on,
Well,
being patient.
I think that's a beautiful answer, and that's where it is important for testers to understand the value of data, the value of analysis. Okay, and the work that you do day in day out. If you analyze your own work, you will find that there is a lot of room for improvement. Okay, uh, as testers, we spend very little time in looking at you know in looking at our own work objectively. Okay, so we may have been designing tests in a certain way. Okay, our thought process. If we dig deep and look at the tests that we have designed in the past 3 months, okay, or the ideas that we have come up with, we could probably find a different approach altogether. Okay, I might walk up to an expert and say, okay, you know what, this is what my thought process is. Okay, these are some of the tests that I have designed. Do you see a pattern here? And more often than not, you will see patterns in the work that we do. Okay, I will take my own example. So I was working with I was doing performance testing for one of the large companies which made these storage devices. So the disk-based storage systems, I was doing performance testing on those, and the way I was designing my tests was more or less giving me similar results across a multiple range of devices. And I noticed that, okay, when I looked at my test, I was like, it is the same thing. I'm not discovering anything new. Okay, so are my tests effective? My customer was okay because they were getting some numbers, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to performance is in some sense equal to certain numbers. Okay, if you show them if it has got a unit, if you can quantify it, they are. But then I myself felt that there was something wrong. So I walked up to one of the architects and I said, "What all parameters can I look at when I, design a performance test?" And then he gave me a long list. And then he said, "Can you look at my tests and make some suggestions?" Then he looked at my tests. He said, "Yeah, these are okay, but you could probably go two level deeper, two steps." And he made some suggestions that, okay, you could also uh, change certain settings in the devices and see how things behave. Have you tried to change settings, or you run it with standard settings? Okay, have you tried to tweak the configuration? Have you tried to deprive your system of resources? Because over a period of time, we are talking about these devices consuming a lot of energy, so there may be burnout, and you may see, one drive crashing or things like that. Have you tried those kind of experiments? That, okay, you've got 46 or 48 drives in one stack, okay, and you're talking about hard drives, which are physical devices. Okay, now these devices, if they get hot, then they may burn out. So what happens if one of them goes off? So these ideas that came in from the architect made me think that, oh, I could use these variations and combinations and things like that. So that is where analyzing your work and the data that you get out of your own work adds value. So you've made some excellent points, Prashant, and I think this is very insightful to how to be a data-driven tester. Now I want to cut the serious talk and get into something fun.
Okay.
So in season one we've done a rapid fire. In season two we will continue the tradition. The rules are quite simple. I will ask you a few questions. Sorry.
Are we having a hamper this season? Yep.
Uh, I wish I could give you an online hamper. Uh, but yeah, we'll think about a hamper pretty soon. Okay, thank you for that idea. So we are collecting more and more ideas and things like that. Okay, so but then, nevertheless, a rapid fire, a few questions for you. No, no time to think. Okay, less than 5 seconds to respond. And if there's a multiple choice question, you will have to support your answer with a why. Why that particular choice? Okay. So you mentioned that you are from Hubli.
Mm.
So what are your thoughts on Girmit?
Oh, that's my favorite. I'm actually amazed that you know about Gurmit.
Because I have spent some time in Hubli myself.
Okay.
And can you explain to the viewers what Girmit is?
Uh, in simple terms, it's the Bale of North Karnataka, I can say. But
Exactly.
this is much more, it's a different taste, and I think it's something that all of you have to try when you go to Hubli or anywhere in North Karnataka. I mean, usually I and my friends, we hang out, we go out and have Gurmit in the evenings when we are in Hubli. So,
So if you are in Hubli, you can't miss Girmit. Okay, so that is one of the, in my opinion, one of the top food items, which is very local, which has got a very unique flavor to it, and you know, and I'm a foodie, so I like to experiment a lot and uh, eat stuff, especially street food, and so. Next one, maybe a little tough one for you,
okay.
or I don't know, maybe easy. Girmit versus papdi chutney.
Gurmit, of course, anytime.
Why?
I don't know. I like Gurmit over, Papdi chutney. I don't know. Probably that, I have been eating Gurmit from, right from my childhood. So I don't know. It's more than a food for us. It's like, a strong, you know,
Yeah, papdi chutney is also one of the delicacies of that region in North Karnataka. I mean, of course, it is consumed in different parts of Karnataka as well, and different parts of India as well. But it originates from that region, and okay. Now we know Girmit is your favorite food. So let's expand it a little more.
mhm.
Your favorite sport?
Cricket.
Are you watching IPL?
Yeah. Did you watch yesterday's match?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we are, I mean, diehard RCB fans.
Are you trying to take a dig at me because I am a Mumbai Indians fan?
Oh, is it? Oh, then that's come in the you know situation. I can say very few times can I make fun of you as a
No,
supporter.
to be very honest, it's a very interesting situation for me, the IPL. So there is a story that I can share. Okay, so there are four teams in IPL which I can absolutely relate to, and I can probably say, "Oh, this is my team." Okay,
Okay,
uh, so one of them is RCB because I have a home in Bangalore. Okay, so
okay,
yeah, so yeah, I have a home in Jalali in Bangalore. So yeah, that's so I if somebody says where do you come from, Bangalore is the answer that I normally give. So RCB, yes, of course. But I was born in Rajasthan, so Rajasthan Royals, of course, is another team. Okay, and now I am uh, married to a girl from Mumbai. Okay,
okay,
and I lived before I moved to the Netherlands. I, I I I lived 10 years of my life in Mumbai, and that's when IPL actually started. So that's why Mumbai. So and I so these, and then of course because I speak Bangla at home, so a little love and support for the Kolkata Knight Riders as well. So 4 teams. I
But
think.
if you have to pick one, what would you choose, Brijesh?
Oh, this is a rapid fire for me. Well,
Hmm.
I'll pick Mumbai Indians. But if they are not playing, Indians, if they are not playing, then any of the 3 teams, you know, that I just
Is
named.
it Brijesh because your wife is watching you nearby?
No, 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 no. Okay, so Mumbai Indians, because of Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, so I was living in Mumbai at the time when Sachin retired. Okay, and on that day when he gave that speech at Wankhede Stadium, I was one of the large number of people who actually cried. Okay, and so I mean, I really got emotional that day because so I don't know. I don't know. There's something. Okay, there's something about that guy. I've always admired him as a cricketer, as an individual, as the kind of inspiration that he has been to several thousand cricketers around the world. So big, small. I used to play a little bit, and again, he was the inspiration. So yeah. Interesting. Okay, so this is more like a very interesting rapid fire. You ask me and turn the tables on me. Thank you for that, Prashant. Now we'll get back to some more serious questions. Let's get back to testing. So in fact, the next one is not testing per se. The next one is something totally different. I have seen you talk about and read your articles on building brands. Why is it important to build a brand?
So, let's say there are a million testers around the world. So, what makes you unique? What makes you different? What makes you stand out? So, according to me, it's your personal brand that is, uh, which will be your ultimate differentiator from rest of the people in testing. Your personal branding is something that will help you to have a competitive edge over others in the industry. I will tell you why. So if you go look at your shelf, everything that you have there is there because either it is popular, you know that brand well, you trust that brand, or you chose it over another brand which you are not familiar of. Right. So if I give you any product, right, if I give you two products, you will go for the product which you have heard of. You will go by the brand. You will, go by the brand that is more popular, more trusted, versus the one that is not heard of or do not have a strong brand. The same thing can happen with us, right? So people are willing to pay more for your services and products when you have a strong personal brand, right? So if you and another thing is many of us think that either I can build a brand or not. But trust me, whether you consciously try to build a personal brand or not, your brand already exists. The
That's good.
point is you need to take control of it, or else it
Right.
will take its own course. Personal brand is all about developing that perception that you want in the minds of the people. Right? You need to ask the question, what do you want to be known for? Right? How do you want people to remember you? And are people thinking the same thing that I want them to think? So doing that is personal branding, right? So uh, there are a lot of advantages of doing this, right? So uh, people will be ready to pay more for your services or for your products, and they will argue less, and it will be easier for you to get promotions or switch jobs. So I have heard one of your past interviews with Ajay, right? Ajay Balamurugada. So Ajay told that he could easily switch jobs or upgrade jobs just because of his reputation. That was Ajay's personal brand.
Yes, exactly.
So that was Ajay's personal brand. He could easily switch jobs because he had built such kind of a reputation. Similarly, when you have your own strong personal brand, there will be numerous opportunities for you. You will get chances to, do consulting, freelancing. You will get opportunities for paid blogging. You might sell, products in your niche. Uh, you'll get chances to speak at conferences. You'll get to travel. You'll get to meet new people. Basically, you'll establish yourself as a thought leader or an influencer in your industry, right? So to do all this, I think one of the ways that I have discovered is to create compelling content. So if you if you create strong content and build an audience around yourself, I think that's one of the good ways to build a personal brand. So you
Absolutely.
need to have a vision of what you should be known for, right? And you need to know your audience, your niche. So who are my audience? Let's say if they are testers, what problems are they facing? How can I help them to overcome those problems? When you try to do that, they will start looking up to you, and you will build an audience around yourself. And then once you start having a brand, it's all about living that brand. You need to fulfill the promises that you have made. Let's say uh, British is an excellent example of how you can build a personal brand, right? So the way you have done using LinkedIn as a channel, that's wonderful, right? If you look at the way Brijesh posts, right? His posts are of high quality, right? Lot of insightful things, right? So he posts a lot of uh, content that is relevant, that are of high quality, and they are solving some challenges that testers are facing. So one is quality, second is consistency. So uh, if Brijesh posts one thing today and he comes back after a year, I will not remember who Brijesh is. Okay, so Brijesh does it at regular intervals. So you remember, okay, hey, I know this guy Brijesh, right? I know him. He talks about nothing called manual testing. So that's how you build a brand. And you need to fulfill these promises that you have made. If Brijesh tomorrow posts a JD from his company, which and the job title is manual testing, so I will say, hey Brijesh, you are not living your brand.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to stand up to what you believe in, and once you build a brand, you need to fulfill the promises that you have made to your audience. So that's why I think it becomes paramount not just for testers but for everyone to have a strong personal brand. You need to have a you know you need to have a strong online presence. So your future, let's say your future business partners or even your future life partner might search you online, and the results they find might decide their future engagements with you, right? So it's very important of what I get when I search Brijesh or what I search when I search for Prashant, right? So yeah, there are a lot of advantages of building a personal brand, and I think it has become essential for both testers as well as every professional, I would say.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the kindness about you mentioning about me. But I have never thought about it from a brand perspective, to be very honest, that seriously. But yeah, I try to be consistent with the things that I do.
I
I,
mean, when you build a personal brand, you should not be someone who you are not. You need to be genuine. It's not that you always do it intentionally, right? So we do it with the intention of helping others.
right.
That created our brands, right? Uh, it's not that you try to be someone that you are not. So that's
Okay.
also really important for a person.
Right. Absolutely. And I will just bring in a little perspective from my side. Since you mentioned my name, when I started posting on LinkedIn, so I've been on LinkedIn for over 11 years now. 2010 is when I started off with LinkedIn, and it was infrequent. It was inconsistent. I used to be there, write something or ask one question, two questions. But I sort of in 2019, you know, end of 2018, 2019, I thought, okay, let me start writing posts consistently. And first, my target was, okay, let me do it every day. Let me see how that goes. It went really well for the first 3 months. And then I was like, but am I making a difference? Do I need to slow down a little bit? Because every day, while it is a good idea, but for my audience to stay connected and to be able to relate to the content, do they feel that I'm too fast or not? I don't know. So let me slow down. So I went down from every day to 3 days a week. Okay. And then I came down to 2 days a week. Okay, as a part of experimenting. And I thought that no, there was demand. Okay, people were asking me questions. Hey, you write about this, and I started getting personal messages and things like that. And that's how it started. So I said, okay, no, at least I'll have a set frequency. Okay, do it 3 times, at least 3 times a week, if not more, is what I said started with. And then I continued with that, and now there are so many things. And then another thing that I learned, of course, in due course is to be patient with the reactions that you get. Okay, sometimes you will get reactions which are consistent to the way you are thinking. Sometimes you'll get reactions which are contrary to what you're thinking. Okay, sometimes you'll get feedback which is not always positive, not always encouraging, which is fine. Okay, people will disagree, people will challenge you, which is okay. It's absolutely fine, and that's one of the ways we learn. Okay. So and then in the whole process, okay, I came across one of your articles about building brands. Okay, this might look like a mutual admiration to the audience, but it is a fact. Okay, so I came across your brand, and where you mentioned something about having an online presence. Okay, the thing that you just spoke about, and I googled myself, and I was amazed to see the results. And that was all because of the consistency that I had used on LinkedIn. And because my LinkedIn is connected with my Twitter, so obviously if I put something on LinkedIn, it goes to my Twitter automatically. Okay. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And I was like, okay, so yeah, so this there is a confirmation in Prashant's blog. So when Prashant is saying that, okay, this is something that will work for you, and when I see the result, I definitely am confirmed that it is working. So your post actually came as a confirmation for me. So thank you, thank you for doing that. But from my perspective, what I can also add to what Prashant just said is find your niche, find that unique aspect that you want to share with the world. Okay, help others rise, and that will lift you up automatically. That's something that I've tried doing. And one of the experiments that I tried was the 21 days 21 tips.
Yeah,
So
that is it.
you joined in. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
that.
I thought I would be consistent till 21 days, but I ended up traveling, so I could not complete it. But yeah, that's again about consistency, right? Having a post every day, right? That's not easy.
Yeah, it's so it is a good brain exercise. Okay, to come up with something new, something different, and I thought I did reasonably well doing it for 21 days. But
Yeah.
what is coming out as a result is something really nice. So there is a surprise that's coming up probably end of next week or something for
Okay.
all the testers, for the testing community, and it is all the result of 21 days 21 tips. So some tip has triggered something, triggered a thought. Okay,
Oh,
so you will find out. Okay, we'll soon find out, and I'm sure that testing community will be very happy with what they see as a result of it. It's for the community. All right, that said, I want to talk about one more thing, and that is about something that you do so well. I mean, of course, everything that we've spoken about, you do really well. But this is something which is really important, I feel, as a tester, and that is about participating in communities, writing blogs, participating in conferences, speaking at conferences, or just attending conferences, what value do I get as a tester if I do that? So my first question is, or my only question is, what's in it for me?
When I started blogging, I had the same question, right? Like, do I get money to, write an article, or what do I get basically by writing? But once I sat down to write something, I realized that how difficult it is to write, right? To put your thoughts on a piece of paper is not easy, right? When you sit and when you enter one line, that's when you really know how much you know, right? It's not easy to write. In order to write, you need to read more. Only when you read more, you'll be able to write more. So when I started reading more books because I wanted to write more. That started helping me to, earn more knowledge, to know more about testing. And I started blogging without any, without any expectations. I thought, I tried genuinely to, find a problem and try to solve that using the blog that I write. I did not expect anything back. Uh, but I enjoyed the process because I had to do a lot of research myself before I write something. Right, that is something that is invaluable. I started doing that. So I think in 2016 I wrote something about mind mapping on
Yes.
LinkedIn. Okay, so that got a lot of praise. That got a lot of you know, that got a lot of attention. So then I started getting closer to the community. I started getting introduced to many of the experts in the community. I started talking to them. I started getting inspired by them. Then I later got an idea. Why not I convert this article to a talk?
Yeah.
So I converted that article to a talk. And the same topic, I think till today I've spoken in around 6 countries. The same topic about mind maps. I've been repeating it. But I'm just saying for the reason because see, I never thought that the article I wrote would help me to present in an international conference. I never thought that, right? So when I started writing, people started realizing, okay, there is a guy called Prashant, and he has good thoughts. Later, when I started converting, when I converted my article to a talk, I was able to present in multiple countries in multiple conferences, wherein again I met so many people. There were opportunities to network with people, right? Your network grows. That will help you to get more recognition. Then once I established myself as a conference speaker and content good content writer, people started coming to me that, hey, I am ready to pay you this much. Will you write a blog for me?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? I started getting uh, you know partnerships with some of the tools or some of the companies that can you write a guest post for me, right? So till then I wrote a lot of articles for free without any intention. But later on it became a way to monetize. I could monetize because of writing. I could say, okay, if I write 1,000 words, this is how much you pay for me. That happened only because I established myself uh, as an authority in terms of writing articles or in speaking in conferences, right? So if I had started with an expectation of that, probably that wouldn't have happened. So when you genuinely try to uh, create compelling content, I think there will be ways which will help you to get more reputation, which will give you opportunities to monetize as well, right? More importantly, when you write, I think you will learn more, and also it will help you to meet peers in your industry. It will help you to network more, right? So I think it's important for everyone to blog, but everyone has that hesitation that I'm not a pro yet, right? I do not know sufficient about any topic. So should I write or not? So nobody is a pro in anything, right? So many of us actually hold back thinking that what will people think about this topic? I might not know enough. People might already know more than me. Would anybody read my blog? So we hold back ourselves from writing that blog. But my recommendation for people is, whatever that is, no matter if you suck at writing, start doing it. Once you get confidence, I think you know wonders may happen. You never know. So it's all about practice. Once you start doing it, I think opportunities will come your way.
And why should I attend a conference?
Conference, there are multiple reasons, because firstly, when you go to a conference, you get opportunities to hear to other experts, right? There is a lot of learning, because uh, you hear from other experts in the industry. That is one learning. Second, you yourself, when you present a talk, uh, you are building a reputation. You are actually helping people to grow and to learn new things. I talked about networking opportunities. You get to network more. And of course, when you speak at conferences, you get to travel. That is another good part, right? You get to travel to different countries. You get to see different cultures, see different food. So when you talk at conferences, there is a lot of learning that happens, a lot of networking. Plus, you will get more opportunities to uh, present in another conferences. So there is, I think, a lot of benefit in talking in conference.
Well, and of course, nowadays with the conferences being online,
Mm.
if you don't, if you are worried too much about money that you're going to spend in traveling, well, that factor is gone. So you can sit in your bedroom actually and enjoy a conference. Listen to speakers, make notes, have fun, network with them. And if you get an opportunity to speak, well, nothing like it. Absolutely great points. And something that you mentioned, the first step that what people want to take, that hesitation, am I good enough? Am I? That is, of course, if you go a little more technical, you might call it imposter syndrome or whatever. And the only way to overcome that is by actually taking that first step. And there are two great applications which can actually help you build that confidence. One is Twitter, and the other one is LinkedIn. Twitter, because it is only 280 characters.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to write one big story. If you can just put one thought in that 280 characters and see the reaction, that'll give you some confidence. Then coming to LinkedIn, the post is only 1300 characters. So if you can summarize your thoughts in 1300 characters, most of us can. The 1300 characters is, if I convert it into a talk, it might just be worth 5 minutes or something like that. If I can summarize those 5 minutes in 1300 characters, nothing like it. It's a great starting point. So, Prashant, thank you so much for those tips. And people who want to start their journey into writing, follow those tips. Okay, listen to what Prashant said. Get in touch with him. He will give you some wonderful ideas as to how you can get started with writing, with building your brand, how what steps you can take, how you can identify your niche, how you can identify what you are good at. Okay, some of the things that Prashant can definitely help you because your talk on mind map. Okay, and the reason why I'm saying is talk because I heard your talk before I read your article. Although your article was the trigger to your talk, but I followed the opposite sequence. Okay, I heard your talk first, and then on LinkedIn I discovered that you had an article about it, and that was one of the inspirations for me to get deeper with mind mapping. Okay, so I learned mind mapping long time ago, but I was not serious about it. It's like, yeah, that's one tool, one way of doing things, blah blah. I know about it, but I never took it so seriously. And then I came across your talk, and then the way you did it, and then some other people who have been using mind maps for excellent purposes. Santosh Tupad, he has this test insane mind maps, a huge collection. That was a good trigger. And when I went in there, I saw contributions from several testers, putting in their mind maps and things like that, right? So those were the kind of inspirations that I had, and then I was like, okay, this is something that I need to do. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think we've been talking for more than an hour now. So thank you so much, Prashant, for giving us your valuable time and for those insightful thoughts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the description of this video, I'm going to include, of course, your LinkedIn profile and your blog page also, so that people can get in touch with you,
Definitely.
and they can learn some of the tips and tricks, and get suggestions. And you know you are a huge inspiration to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other testers. So keep doing all the cool stuff that you've been doing.
Thank you so much.
I love to listen to your talks. I love to read your posts. I think one of uh, the things that comes to my mind first when I read your blog is how sorted is this guy. Okay, so that's that's one of the things that comes to my mind, and we could see that in this conversation as well, how sorted your thoughts are, which is excellent. So thank you so much, Prashant, for
Yes, I think I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, and it was a pleasure to be talking to you on Testers Week. Sorry.
thank you so much, Prashant. You have a wonderful time. I know that you are in Bangalore now to attend a wedding, so enjoy the wedding, and we'll keep in touch. Okay,
Definitely.
there are some more thoughts that I have that you can help the testing community with. So we will keep in touch and talk about those subjects. So
Sure.
talk to you soon, Prashant.
See you
See you.
soon, Vijay. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.